we talk a lot about video games, so why not do it on a platform where everyone can hear us?
Yeah,
You know,
for
chat
sure.
and talk about video games. So
Yeah. I've been playing since I was 4. So
mhm.
my mom introduced me to video games. She bought an NES, wrapped it up, put it under the tree for Christmas. And I thought, oh my God, she got me an NES. She originally had bought that for her and just wrapped it under the tree and made it look like it was for me. It was really for her.
That's great.
I was like, dang, mom. Then, yeah, she was on that thing, man. She played the heck out of that system, man. She was on Pac-Man, Operation Wolf, Mario Bros, Ninja Gaiden. We played a lot of
Man,
games. Snake Rattle and Roll. Um, she played that was mainly her areas. Tetris, Dr. Mario. Those were all her games. She played all of those faithfully
man.
during the summertime. She was playing those games 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and that was the only time I could stay up that late was watching her play.
Wow. That's
Mhm.
crazy. It's pretty rare to meet somebody who got into gaming because of their parents. Right? It's usually the other way around. Like their kids into gaming, so their parents see it and they're like, "Oh man,
Mm-hmm.
this is pretty cool."
Yep.
That's interesting. I My first introduction to gaming was at a babysitter's house, and I was also 4 years old. And I remember she set me down in front of the TV. She's like, "You want to play Nintendo?" And I was like, "What's that?" And she set me down in front of a TV, and she put Mario Brothers One in, and after about 2.5 hours, I finally beat level one. I mean, I was four. You know what I
Wow.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
four.
That makes
Hey,
sense. Makes
you know
sense.
what I
Yeah.
mean? I didn't
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
the coordination
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
quite figure it
Of
out, but
course.
I was hooked, man. I was hooked. And we didn't grow up. When I grew up, my parents weren't like poor, but we weren't like drop $100 on NES levels of rich either. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah.
I would ask for a Nintendo for every birthday and every every holiday. Well, Christmas mostly, but and then I remember the Super Nintendo came out, and then my mom took me to Game Exchange, which, if y'all don't know, Game Exchange has been around for a long time. Which, really quick, funny story about Game Exchange, they literally were the first place where you could trade games,
Yeah.
but they did it differently than they do now, right? So you would go in, and every game had a level. So, like, the least popular games are level one, your medium popularity games were level two, and then your super popular games are level three. So if you had a game of that level, you could go in and you could give them your game and $5 and get another game of the same level. And then you could trade up
Dang.
for a little bit more money, right? You could give them a level one game and $13 and get a level two game. So that's how I got games back in the day. Just a quick kind of a branch off into that. But she took me to that game exchange and she let me buy my first NES. The Super Nintendo was already out, but I didn't care, man. I was so happy to finally own this console. So I think that's what kind of influenced me to start collecting for it as an adult.
Yeah.
Was that introduction into gaming there?
It it's kind of crazy too because around the time the Super Nintendo came out, like my mom was still playing, but the you could tell like the graphics in the games were, I mean, it was getting a little bit, it was more advanced at the time, of course, and the games that they were creating, the side scrollers and all that stuff, it was taking a toll on my mom because she was getting motion sickness really bad. Like
Interesting.
she would play and then she'd have to stop because she was like, oh, I'm about to throw up, right? So it got to a point to where she'd still play the NES, but once we got deeper into the Super Nintendo, she was done. She had given the hobby up. But by
Oh
that
goodness.
time, I was entrenched in it.
Yeah.
Entrenched in it. And for me, like if I wanted a toy growing up, Like I remember it vividly to the day. It was a summer day. I remember it. Power Rangers was huge. The
Oh,
first
bro.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was huge. And Tommy, Jason David Frank, rest in peace,
Mm.
was the Green Ranger. He was still bad. He was still the bad guy. And when the Dragon Dagger came out in Toys R Us, oh
Oh,
my God.
man.
I wanted that joint so bad. I go to my mom. I'm like, hey, Mom, I want the Dragon Dagger. Can we go get it? And she's like, if you can beat my top score in Pac-Man, we can go get it right now. Never beat it.
Yo, Pac-Man is mad hard. Like,
Man,
people don't understand how hard that game is.
bro, she was like level 20, 22. Like she was a beast back in the day in Pac-Man. Like there was no way in the world I was coming close to those levels. Like top, it was insane. So it pissed me off, of course, because it was a time where I wasn't good enough at playing. But that changed my mentality when I played games moving forward, right? Became extremely competitive. And I'm not a competitive gamer by any means, but that meant like when I go and play a game, I'm going to finish it. Like I'm going to beat that game. And that just kind of carried on until, all this.
Did you know you can actually, technically you can beat Pac-Man. The game will crash after level like 256.
Well, I was never gonna get
It'll
to
crash. Yeah. The people that can do that, man, like the people who can score like 1,000,000 points on Donkey Kong or completely crash Pac-Man, those are some elite level gamers. Because I could never do that. Pac-Man is hard. It's super hard.
No.
Super hard. What was what was your favorite console growing up?
Early 90s, it was Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
Super Nintendo was huge, and then a close second was Sega Genesis. Like I had both, the Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and I played them for specific things, right? Super Nintendo, I had Street Fighter, like every version of Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Street Fighter 2, Alpha 2 when that came out, and Donkey Kong, Super Metroid, Link to the Past. I could go down the list of games. There's so many games on Super Nintendo. And then for Sega Genesis, it was a little different. Samurai Showdown was huge. Mortal Kombat was another one. And then I had my 32X, so Virtua Fighter. I was huge on that because I played that in the arcade every time we got a chance to go to the arcade. I was playing Virtua Fighter. So I played that a lot on 32X. What about you?
Yeah, that's tough. I'm a big NES, collector, but I think much like you, I think the Super Nintendo, it was just, I personally think that it's right there in the conversation for greatest console ever made. Just the quality of games, it's just second to none in my opinion. You had some of the best RPGs, best platformers, best fighting games. I mean, you just had it all. So we're both collectors. We both collect video games. You started, what's it been, about 2 years now? 2 years ago?
Yeah. We had that conversation. I was like, hey, dude, I want to legit start collecting, like really collecting. And I made that decision.
Yeah. I remember it vividly. It was an interesting conversation because I'm sitting at work. I work from home, and I get a text that says, "Hey, man, I think I'm going to start collecting games." And I'm like, "Sweet, that's awesome." I've been collecting video games for about 15 or 16 years now, so it was great to have somebody else that I'm super close with getting into the hobby. So I was pretty excited. I'm thinking, okay, he's maybe going to be like Dreamcast or Super Nintendo, PlayStation, something like that. And I get a text about 2 minutes later that says, "I think I'm going to start with Neo Geo." And I was like, what? Really? I mean, what? I mean, we're just
I said I'm just
we're
going
just gonna start on hard mode. That's
hard
what we're gonna
mode,
do. It's like, okay, man.
legendary, god mode, whatever mode you want to call it.
Yeah,
I jumped smooth off the cliff, no bungee cord, nothing. I was
yeah,
like, we're going for it, baby.
yeah. He just Googled like, what can I collect that will make me hate money? And then Neo Geo popped up. He was like, we're doing that. And I'm like, okay, man. But kudos to you. You're stuck with it. I mean, you've got a super impressive Neo Geo collection. I mean,
Yeah,
it's a lot
yeah,
of games,
yeah.
man.
It's just to slide it over. I mean, that's my
Yeah,
shelf of Neo Geo stuff right here. So I've got 59 games and
yeah,
roughly, what is that? 6 Japanese. So, or actually,
for
yeah, 6 in Japanese and the rest are
yeah,
in English, right?
yeah,
Um, when I first started, I bought the console off eBay. It was refurbished. It was recapped, modded with a Unibios 4. And for those of you that don't know what that is, the Unibios basically is a modification on the board where basically it's region free, completely region free. So let's say, for instance, if you have a Japanese Neo Geo console, you put a Japanese card in, it plays in Japanese, of course, right? If
right.
you put in an English cart into that console, it's going to play in Japanese as well, right? Vice versa, if you have an English Neo Geo AES console, you put in a Japanese cart, it's going to play in English. Well, with the Unibios, it doesn't really matter if it's English or Japanese. You can make the selection if you want to play it in Japanese, English, European. Um, it can do additional modifications if you want it to be the console version or if you want it to be the arcade version. You
Ah,
can do that as well. So it's very customizable on how you want to play the game. It doesn't mean it's going to be any less harder, but yeah. So I started with picking up Japanese titles, just a handful, and then that shifted to I want to collect a US library for Neo Geo AES. So it's and a lot of people out there will tell you like you're insane. This is you can
I was probably one of them at one
you
point.
were you
And
were
I was like, bro, what?
you
Why?
were you were like, dude, you're why? Like, why don't you collect MVS or why don't you emulate? I'm like, I don't want to do any of that. Well, I have MVS, so I don't collect
Yeah,
a lot of MVS, but I do have a few titles. And generally, I was only picking up the MVS titles for games that I knew were going to be either next to impossible to afford on the AES, or I knew it was going to be extremely hard for me to find. And then 20% of those games I actually have on AES now, surprisingly enough.
yeah.
So it definitely not for the faint of heart. And
No,
my
not at all.
pocketbook over the last 2 years, I mean, I look back because I keep a spreadsheet of who I bought them from, how much they were at the time. I look at the market too in terms of the quality and the prices of what they are now from the time that I bought them. I mean, it's an investment. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, 59 games doesn't sound like a lot of games, but it is when you're talking about Neo Geo. When you're talking about, you know, there are no really $10 games on Neo Geo. You're not going to
Not one.
find that, right?
Not
And
one.
most Neo Geo games, if you're going to collect them, and it's, well, in your case anyway, it's not going to be just a cart. It's going to be
The
cart,
complete.
manual, complete.
Yep.
Yeah. So 59 games doesn't sound like a lot, but in Neo Geo numbers, that's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So
And I know
it's
collectors that are going for both Japanese and English.
yeah.
It's yeah.
But I mean, it's a lot. I mean, that you've picked up over just a short span of time. I mean, it took me 15 years to get where I'm at. So
I'm I'm kind of a nutcase, I guess you could say,
I would agree with that.
because well, I mean, like even my wife says that when I get into a certain hobbies, I really get what's the word she says? She says I get oh my goodness, I can't think of it. Not infatuated, but
Like
she's
obsessed or like
obsessed. Thank you.
obsessed?
Yes.
Yeah.
She says I get super obsessed. I'm looking at everything about that hobby. I'm doing all my research about that hobby, and I'm over there talking about, oh, babe, look at this. Take a look at what I'm doing. Oh, this is what I'm going to get next. Oh, she's like, all right, whatever that means. I don't know what you're talking about, but okay, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, so for you, right? I
Mhm.
mean, you decided to go for a complete licensed Nintendo NES collection, right? You got it
Uh-huh.
back behind you.
Yep.
So, you know, I look at some of the Grail games on Neo Geo. There's there's many
Mhm.
that they're extremely hard to find and they're extremely expensive. And some people out there that probably don't know, you hear about Metal Slug 1 or 2. You
Yeah.
hear about those being like, oh, one of those sold for $50,000. And the actual, in generally speaking, that probably did happen, but the market for an AES complete in box, mint condition or near mint condition, English version is probably somewhere around 30 to 50. So it's somewhere in
Mm.
that ballpark, right?
Yeah.
And then you break that in half, maybe 15 to 10 to 15 for a Metal Slug 2, and then you've got some other titles out there that are probably somewhere between the 7 to 15, like Neo Turf Masters, a golf game of all games, 12 to 15 grand. Is it
Ugh.
worth it? I would say so, but I don't know if I could drop 15 grand for a game.
No.
Like, I'm
There's
not
not a
balling
lot of
like
people
that.
can.
I'm
Yeah.
not balling
Yeah.
like that. If I sold my entire collection of everything else and got maybe 20K for it, is it worth it? I'd probably say so because I can go back and get all this stuff later on.
Yeah.
But I say that, I say all of this because those games cost that much.
Hmm.
And the one game that you need,
Yeah.
right, is stadium events.
Yep.
You need that. And I'm not saying stadium events is 30 grand, but
Well, it is
oh,
for a cart.
okay.
It's about 25 to 30
Okay,
right now. Yeah.
okay. Well, then there you go. Right.
Yeah.
And complete in box, I have no idea. I'd probably say it's closer to the Metal Slug, maybe.
It's I don't know. I mean, some people speculate that complete box one would go for like 75
Man.
because I mean, there's not very many. Well, so a little background on stadium events. Stadium events is just track and field. They're the same game,
Yeah.
right? And I'm pretty sure that I have this history right. If I'm pretty sure somebody will comment if I've got it wrong. But the original Bandai made the game Stadium Events, and they actually made the Power Pad.
Yep.
And I guess Nintendo liked the idea, and they were like, "Hey, stop production on that. We're gonna make track and field." But like, supposedly, like 200 or 300 copies of Stadium Events actually got sold in the U.S. before they switch over to track and field, and that's why it's so rare. It's a little bit not quite as rare, I guess, in PAL and the UK because I guess maybe more copies got out. So a PAL copy will cost you probably about $1,500 for a cart versus the 35 grand that one went for recently. I think it was like 35 or so that I saw in some Facebook group. A lot of people are getting theirs graded now, so they're wanting that premium because it's graded
Yeah.
by WADA and all that good stuff. So, but yeah, to for those who don't know, like my goal was a licensed US set minus stadium events because I knew that that's just a game that is kind of unattainable for a lot of people. And I finished in August of last year was when I got it. And it was quite anticlimactic actually, and I kind of that's my one regret about it is I wish I would have found that final game like in the wild or something, but it didn't really go like that. What actually happened is I'm part of several NES collecting groups and retro groups, and I had posted a pickup that I had, and I posted that I was down to 11 games, and somebody messaged me and was like, "What 11 games do you still need?" And I told him, he's like, "I have all of those," and he gave me a really good price, and I was like, "Man." So I was like, yeah, we made the deal, and he shipped them out to me, and I got them all in the mail, and that was it.
Wow.
We were done. So,
Wow.
but it still felt good. Don't get me wrong. I'm still very proud that I was able to actually finish it, right? Which brings me to a question, kind of back to you, right? I know this answer for me, but one of the hardest parts about doing this or going for a set is that middle part of it. You know, for me, there's about 680 some odd NES games in the set that I was going for. So at around 400 or so, or 300, 350 ish, it kind of gets. I don't want to say that you're like doubting yourself, but it's like, am I going to be able to do this? Like, is this really attainable? I've been at this for, 10 years or whatever, and I'm still not there. But then you have a moment that makes it real, that makes you go, okay, maybe I can really reach this goal. What was that moment for you? Or has that moment for you happened yet?
It hasn't happened yet.
Hasn't
Because
happened
I'm
yet?
still new, right? So where I'm at a point, I am at a certain crossroads, and I had this conversation earlier today at a game store with one of the owners that
Yeah.
I talk to pretty frequently. Um, and he was telling me how he's consolidating his collection. Like he's like, I don't really need all this. I've got my Steam Deck, and I've got this, and I've got that. But he did say like there are certain games for certain consoles I'm never getting rid of. Like he said, my
It's
PS
fair.
Vita, I'm not getting rid of. I've got all that stuff sealed in box because I saw the writing on the wall, right? But
Smart
he's in
man.
the industry, right? He knows, he
Yeah.
sees these things. I started with the Neo Geo AES because that was something that I wanted as a kid that my parents were never going to get me, right? And that was in and out, in one ear and out the other after that. So it was over. And I finally got to a point in my life where I felt that, okay, I I've been blessed enough to have a steady income to where I can justify making a few of these purchases. Now, I know some people out
Sure.
there are like, bro, you rich, you balling. Like, no, I'm not. And Greg will tell you, there's many
Yeah.
times over the last 12 or 13 years where we wanted to play a new game. I couldn't afford buying a $60 game because I was living check to check. Like when I say times have changed and everyone's situation out there is different. Not everybody's going to be able to collect, hundreds of games or buy out lots or any of that stuff.
Hmm.
Some people are going to have to grind, hustle, flip. I got to buy these 5 games and sell these games so I can get a better game. That's the way you're going to have to do it. There's plenty of
Yeah.
YouTubers out there doing stuff like that, videos like that. For me, what keeps me planted is I know I've got 59 games here.
Hmm.
Great. Awesome. I've gotten to a point to where I only have maybe 7, 8 games that are, I mean, I guess you would call them the affordable AES games left before
The
we start
affordable
the
ones. Yeah.
affordable ones,
Yeah.
right? Before we get to a threshold where every conversation with us, with a Neo Geo AES seller is, oh, well, that's going to cost you 4 to 7 grand for that
Mhm.
one game, right? Or it's going to cost you a 5-figure, you know, price tag. So what I did was to space it out so I didn't get burnt out. I started increasing my collection across all the other consoles that I grew up playing: the Sega Genesis, the Super Nintendo, the 64, the PlayStation series. I did that so I wouldn't feel that, okay, I'm never going to accomplish this. This just blankets the blow of this super expensive console, the Rolls Royce of consoles is what they like to call it, right?
Yeah.
And say, okay, this gives me a couple of months to weather that and not have this thing in the back of my head say, I need a Neo Geo game. And I'm there. I'm already there. I'm there right now. And I've got a couple of sellers that I'm really tight with that I've bought plenty of games with, and I trust them because they sell me legit games, and I've tested each and every single one that they've sent me. I've played every single one that they've sent me. I've looked at boards. Hell, I've got I've got a damn loop scope here to look at the insert and look at certain implications in the insert and manual to make sure things are real. That's how serious it is with this console. Like, you can go out and buy a PlayStation 2 game and you can fairly know that, okay, that's a replacement case with a repro insert. I know that. Cats out here, they're making these to look just like they came from the factory, and new collectors can't tell unless you're doing your research. So I started out with the low end games so I could start understanding. Like, even Neo Geo games have a distinct smell. They have a smell. Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Every single game has a distinct smell. If you're talking about the soft case, they have this old library leather bounded book, smell like grandpa's library or something like that. I don't know. It's just weird. It's like musk and old cologne.
My old cologne and bad life choices. Yeah.
Bad life choices is what it smells like. So, but I know probably after this year, I planned on adding 5 or 6 more titles, so that's going to put me in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Going into next year, I'm probably going to hit that wall where I'm going to be like, oh shoot, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. But I'm so vested in it now.
Yeah, man.
So vested. But the problem is there is probably 2 or 3 games that I can't order these. I can't buy these off of eBay. Like, if someone overseas has the game, I would probably have to fly overseas and talk to the seller. It's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those scenarios that is it worth it, right? Some people would say, is it worth it for a game that's just going to sit there on your shelf? It's not like you're playing it every day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Hell, someone could sit here and say about all these games here, well, have you played every single game? No, I haven't. I'll be honest. Why do you collect? Why do you do it? Why does anyone work on a car? Why does anyone paint? Why does anyone like to go out to the bar or the club? It's an honest answer. Like, people need release, right?
Mm-hmm.
They need a stress reliever. This just so happens to be my stress reliever. I work hard. I take care of my family. I try to provide as much as possible. I need some me time too. Everybody needs me time. And if you think you're not worthy of it, you definitely are. And if you don't know what that hobby or whatever that passion is that makes you happy outside of your daily and weekly and monthly and yearly responsibilities, do some soul searching. Find out. Me and G happen to know what that is. It's video games.
It very much is.
Literally been a part of our lives since early childhood. Hell, we was just out of diapers when we started playing video games.
Old? Yeah, where's old? Yeah. So you haven't had that moment that makes it real just yet?
Oh man, I'll tell you this. The moment that it's real is, well, okay. Let me take this back. Hold on. Let me just pull this game out. Hold on. Let me
I know exactly what he's about to get. Yeah.
Let me take this out the case. Let me take it out of the case here, because this bad boy here, right here, Garo, Mark of the Wolves, right here in the snap case. This game is my holy grail. Thank you, G. So I'm gonna do the plug right here. Greg helped me out because I had gone through a buying spree of other Neo Geo games at the time. Right, I had picked up a couple of dog tag titles for my collection, and I was like, you know what? I'm good now. I'm good. And then one of my Neo Geo connects hits me up. He's like, hey, dude, I'm selling Mark of the Wolves. I was like, no, you didn't. I had just spent the last of my games fund. Like, I have my games fund. So I have my regular stuff, and then I have a games fund that I keep all my extra money, my chips in for when I want to buy titles or if I just want to go and splurge and do all that. I wiped that out because I didn't think there was going to be anything else. And this sorry sucker decided to say, hey, man, I got one for you. I know you've been wanting it for a while. I was like, I got to have it. So I text Greg, and I'm like, bruh. Actually, I called you.
Well, I remember exactly how this happened because so you had been looking for Super Mario Brothers or Super Mario World CIB.
Yes, I was.
Or the box and the
box. Yeah.
And in one of the retro groups I'm in, I saw somebody selling a box, and it was a decent price.
It was good.
So I texted you. I was like, hey, man, here's a box right here. He's like, man, I can't do that right now. I'm standing in front of my collection trying to find something to sell. And I was like, damn, what happened, bro? Did you lose your job? Like, what the hell happened? Like, what is the deal here? He's like, somebody, told me that, they have this game and I need to come up with X amount of dollars so they can hold it for me. And I was like, man, I can help you out. Like, just calm down. Like, how much is it? Like, and you told me, and I was like, okay, that's not terrible. I could probably help out with that. So,
man.
So I knew that was your Grail game because the reason I asked the question about like what makes it real is because I had a moment that made it real for me. So,
I mean, you did this. This is my, and there's probably other collectors out there that they have other games. Other Neo Geo collectors probably have different games. Mark of the Wolves at the time was probably the best fighting game out there next to Street Fighter Third Strike.
Oh, yeah, that's fair.
These two were the most comparable fighting games next to each other. SNK had this, and then Capcom had Street Fighter Third Strike, and Third Strike was amazing. But this game was amazing too. I'm gonna open this up a little bit so y'all can see the little baggie with the manual right there. And this is legit, y'all. This is real. This isn't fake. This isn't a repro. Everything is real. Everything is real. And these big ass cartridges.
Big ass VCR tape cartridges. Yeah.
And I know it's probably coming around like I got a bunch of dirty prints on here. It's really not. It's just this camera's, I don't know what it's doing here. I probably need to polish this down a little bit, but this was my Grail game. And my boy here of 14 plus years said, I got you, bro. And I paid him back, y'all. On time.
Right what he said he was going to.
I told him, this is when you'll have your money, and I paid it back. And I took care of the tax and everything, or whatever, the transfer tax and all that. Yeah. I made sure you got all of it and then some. And then when he got his money, y'all, that's when you came down for Retropalooza.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. I'm telling you, when somebody hooks you up with your Grail game, you got to take care of them, folks. Take care of them. I was giving him games out of my collection. I was just like, bro, I got Cube.
Are you sure?
I got Cube games. I got this. Yeah. I got that. Take this. Man. You already paid me back. Nah, bro, you don't understand what you did for me. And it doesn't even have to be video games, y'all. It doesn't even have to be video games. This was a friend that was able to bless another friend with something that they cherish and they've always wanted, right? He paid it forward, basically, because he didn't have to say he had the money. Be like, man, that's awesome, bro. That's awesome that happened. I'm sorry you can't get it. You know, I
Yeah.
had to put the money in there. And I told my guy, I was like, hey dude, I got the cash. I'm gonna send it over to you. He's like, cool, it's on hold. Send the rest during this time. Cool, got it. But you build trust in this community with collectors, right? Me and G have that. Like, hell, I got games right here. These got to get shipped to him.
Yeah, I forgot about him. You probably
forget.
could have got me, and I would have never remembered, because I remember, like, I got to ship you your games, and I was like, bro, what? Oh, those games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Yep.
my bad. You right.
Yep.
Yeah. But so part of the reason that I was, eager to help you out is I remember the being in a similar scenario, and
Yeah.
I'll share a picture here. Let me see.
I think I know what game this is. I think.
So here's a picture of me.
Ah,
On
the Samson. Yep.
May 24th, 2019. So this is when it became real. And so part of the reason that I really wanted to help you is because I remember this day, and I remember how it all happened. This is actually from a shop in Oklahoma City. I live in Arkansas, so this shop that I had happened to just start following on Facebook in Oklahoma City posted that they had this game, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, we have to go down there. We just happened to be going down to Oklahoma that weekend because my wife's parents lived there. We were going down there for a visit, and at the time, this was 2019. I think they were asking 1,000 flat for this game, which now I think the game is about $2,500 for a cart ish, right?
Yeah.
And I was at 399 NES games at the time, so it made it even. This was game 400, and I remember, like, I didn't have the $1,000 at the time, so for a long time I had been playing Magic the Gathering. I played it competitively for a lot of years, and it just so happened that this shop was also a card shop, so they took Magic cards as trade as well. So I gathered up all of my Magic cards and took them with me, and the guy was really cool. He knew how excited I was to get the game. I walked in and was still in the case. I was so excited, and I handed him all my stuff, and he was going through it, and he's adding it up, and I remember I was shaking. I was like, please be enough.
Yeah.
Please get me within enough. And it turns out I had enough. I ended up getting this and two other heavy hitters that day, which I don't even remember. I don't remember what games they were. It was DuckTales 2 and Jetsons, which were at the time, like, 200 and 250 and 150. I was able to get that and those, but that moment, I remember it. I remember just being like, holding it and going, okay, this is real. I can actually do this. Because outside of stadium events, Samson was the next most expensive game. I'm like, if I can get this one, I can get the rest of them. And I found it in the wild. And this moment right here is what made it real. And so when you were, because you'd been talking about Mark of the Wolves since you started your journey on collecting. Yeah. So when you told me that, I was like, man, I know how I would have felt if I'd have walked out of that shop that day without that game.
Yeah.
And then came back later and it'd be gone.
Yeah.
Because I haven't seen one in the wild since then. I've seen them online. I've seen them at, on eBay and things like that. But being able to find that game in the wild and be able to walk out of that shop that day with that game meant it made the experience for me. So I was just happy that I was able to be in a position to help you have a similar experience. So that was one of the big things.
You really did, bro. And I don't know. I can continue to say thank you and thank you and thank you because, like, dude, this is my Samson, y'all. This is my Samson. And unfortunately, I have many other Samsons.
Yeah, there's mad sequels to your Samsons, bro.
Mad sequels. So that brings me to my question, right? So you've got your banger here, right?
Yeah.
What would bring that feeling back? What game would just jaw drop you and be like, oh my god, I'm shaking, I can't believe I have this game in my hand and it's mine? Are we talking about stadium events?
It's stadium events, yeah. Because while I did hit my goal, I'm still one game away from the set,
Yeah,
and I've struggled with, do I want to get a PAL version, because I technically would own the game, even though it wouldn't be NTSC, but I would still complete the set. And if I happen to run across a PAL version for a decent price, I may do it. But the game that I would freak out about would probably be stadium events. Yeah, for sure. There have been other games since Little Samson that have been really great. Moments where I like freaked out and said, I can't believe, like Earthbound
yeah,
was one, getting complete box
yeah.
Earthbound. Chrono Trigger complete box was a big one,
I need that so
which
bad.
what was crazy about that is my wife found it. And that's another thing, man. Like, another thing about this hobby is it's really great when you have a wife or a partner that is very supportive. Even though when you look at this game from a practical sense, it's a bunch of grown men collecting pieces of plastic. But when you're passionate about something and you have somebody behind you that's as equally as that's passionate about the fact that you're passionate about something, it's
Yeah.
it's it's super helpful. So in 2019, my wife actually found someone selling complete and box Chrono Trigger for 250, and I was like, well, that seems like a lot. At the time, it was.
Yeah, I know.
And she's like,
Damn.
no, I think we should buy this. And I'm like, okay. And we bought it, and now look at it.
Yeah,
So
you get a mint condition complete, and you gotta drop $1,000 to $1,200 for it.
yeah, they're
You
expensive.
know,
So
I mean, I still need one for my collection, and um, another one on Super Nintendo that I would love to have. I just don't want to spend the money on it. I'd rather spend a Neo Geo game, Hagane, on Super Nintendo.
oh man,
And you know what? In
you're
playing
so
that
bougie,
game,
bro. Like
I
I
am
got it. No,
bougie,
I'm kidding.
bro. I no, it's true. I'm a bougie game collector, y'all. I'm sorry. I'm not rich. I promise y'all, I'm not. I'm not balling. I just know how to save my money and blow it all. And
Bro,
once I get some extra money, it's all gone that following day. It's gone.
and he's not lying. Like he'd be like, man, I want this game. I'm like, hey, I have a card. He's like, I don't want no card. It's got to be complete. And I
Nah,
was like,
God need it. Yeah, I'm like
why?
I don't want no plastic. I want it in the box with the
Yeah.
manual. I need my chips with dip.
Yeah, some of that's rubbed off on me too, because I catch myself at like conventions and be like, I want this game, but I want the box. I'm like, damn it,
I mean,
why am I like this now?
well, I
Why
mean,
am I like this now?
and that's I'll take some fault to that, but I'm just saying, like, look at it from this standpoint. It's an investment, right?
Sure.
At the end of the day, it is an investment. So why don't you maximize your investment? Now, the whole graded video games nonsense, that's a completely different conversation. Do I have graded video games? Yes. Have you had graded video games? Yes.
I have. Yeah,
Right? You made a solid ass trade
I did.
with yours. And actually, you know what? Please
Oh,
tell the
yeah.
folks out there about this one.
So in 2020, which
No? Yeah.
it was 2020 when I got it.
Yeah.
Because I think it was right after I got out of the hospital. Because
Yes.
I went down bad with COVID in
Yeah.
2020, and I was in the hospital for about a week.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because it was my wife's birthday, around my wife's birthday.
Yeah.
We live in Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, and we went up to Joplin because there's a game store up there that's pretty good size and pretty popular. And again, my wife coming in hot. We go to the store and they have Conker's Bad Fur Day sealed and graded in their case. I think it was 8.5A.
Yeah.
And I didn't really pay it no mind, whatever. My wife just kept looking at it because I think they wanted $450 for it at the time. She just kept looking at it, kept looking at it, kept looking at it. She's like, hey, I know it's a lot, but I think we should get this. And I was like, really? She was like, yeah, I think that this could really have some upside. So we bought it. And then a year later, the prices of graded games spiked hard, right? With the whole WADA thing and heritage auctions and all that stuff.
Yep.
And we tried to move it at Retropalooza 2021, but we didn't really get any bites on it. So I was kind of like, meh. we probably lost out on this, you know. So I took it back in 2022 last year to Retropalooza, and we ran across a shop, and they took it and they were like, most of the time when you trade stuff in, you're not going to get its value. So he looked it up. I think he looked it up on like price charting, and he looked at what the eBay sales were currently, and he gave me full value in trade for it. So it was like $1,700 in trade from
That's a
that
good
game,
flip. Good
and
flip.
I picked up a bunch of box NES stuff. I think I picked up a sealed game from him.
Oh, that Star
So
Wars.
yeah, I still
Yeah,
have it.
the
Yeah,
Empire Strikes Back, bruh. I was pissed because
it's nice.
I
Yeah,
told myself I should have bought that, and damn, I didn't. And you got that the black box, was it Gyromite, the 5-screw, the hang tab?
Slalom. It was
Oh,
Slalom.
okay,
Yeah. Yep.
man. And that one was, bruh, that was
They're nice. Very
they didn't
nice
even have that
condition.
priced right.
No,
They had that underpriced,
way underpriced. Yeah, I
way
think they had a price at
underpriced.
like $70 or $60. It's
Yeah,
nice.
it was,
Um,
man, it's crispy.
yeah, and but I was like, it was awesome. I was like, oh my gosh. So we essentially, tripled our money on it, and was just that's another. My wife just was like,
She's
man,
the
I think we
goat.
should get this. She
She,
kind of is.
y'all,
Yeah,
she's the gamer goat. Like
yeah.
when I tell you that this woman, you take her to a convention, bro, she leaving with money still in her pocket after a convention.
Yeah,
She could buy up every table and still leave, man. She talks folks down. And like
she's a haggler.
me and Greg, the first year, man, we were too afraid to ask for a discount and all this, and then at the tail end she's like, y'all are messing up.
Yep.
Like, y'all are just trying to leave
Yep.
broke. Like, start asking for discounts. And I'm like, man, these are business. Man, who cares? They came to the convention. They trying to make money. You need more money to buy more. Okay, I'm sorry. My bad. So we come in last year, bruh. We nickel and diamond our way to the top. And yeah, we
Yep.
didn't pick up as much as we did the year before. I know
I did.
well,
Yeah, we did this year. It was
20
crazy
was it 2021 was insane for me.
for you. Yeah,
Insane.
yeah,
I like I picked up 2 AES games. Yeah, 2, and it should have been 3 cuz I ended up later on down the road needing the game, and I didn't realize I didn't have it in my collection. That's the problem, y'all, when you start collecting too much and you start getting sidetracked and you looking at pieces of candy all over the place. Like, oh, piece of candy, piece of candy, piece of candy. I'm like, oh, there's another game, there's another game, there's another game. Oh, I need that console. And you're like, I don't know what I have anymore. What? And then you got to start looking
yes.
at inventory apps and all this stuff. Like, hell, for my Xbox collection, that's exactly what it is. Inventory app. I'm like, okay, I have that. But to your point, you made an awesome deal, an awesome trade with that graded game. And I'm sitting here with 3 graded games right now. And my original thought process was I was just going to keep them for a long time, right? They're Xbox
Yeah,
games.
yeah,
But I see people flipping, and I start watching, and I know there's going to be some bashers behind graded games, like you should be playing them, you shouldn't be grading them. What's the purpose behind it? Blah blah. I mean, you could say the same exact thing for comic books, for trading cards, your Pokemon cards.
yeah,
You can say the same exact thing for that, your coins. You can say the same exact thing for all of that stuff. Within these hobbies, there's always going to be a subset of individuals that collect a different way, right? Some people collect for reselling purposes. Some people collect for their own personal purposes, like G and I do. And there's going to be others that collect for pure investment. They do a flip. Like, I'm going to buy this game, get it graded, and then I'm going to flip it on the auction, make a little money, take the profit, keep in my pocket, and then use the rest to go do another game. That's just the way the world works now in terms of video games. It wasn't like that 15, 20 years ago, right? It was just
no,
go buy your game, and guess what? You could go buy NES carts for cents on the dollar. because nobody wanted them because all the new hotnesses were out. PlayStation 2 was popping, 360, Xbox, all that, right? And now we've come to a point in the video game community where the huge question mark is how long until hard copies go away, the physical copies go away. How long is it going to be before we go full digital? Because I had that conversation today too. Like, once we go full digital, it's going to be all hell breaking loose for folks trying to go and collect hard, physical copies of games, because everybody's going to be holding on to them, and the prices are not going to drop. They may not increase, but they are not going to drop.
Yeah.
We're going to have a support level for those of you that understand support and resistance levels with investing. You're going to have a support level and you're going to have a resistance level. Right now, the gaming industry, in terms of collecting, we're not at support. We probably hit some form of resistance in COVID, right? And
Yeah.
but I still think we're in a bull market with video games. We're not in a bear market yet. I don't know.
No, I think you're right. I mean, a lot of collectible. We see the same thing with Magic the Gathering was another example. Over the past few years, the prices of some of the more sought after and rare cards have gone through the roof, and we're starting to see that in video games as well. And I think that video games are different in a sense because it's something that not only you can take out and look at, but you can interact with it and play it.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's part of a culture now, especially these like older video games. This is essentially the gamer's version of antiques.
Yeah.
Is essentially what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's history. It's video game history, but it's part of history. A lot of these old games shape the games that we love and enjoy and play now. I was, just talking to you today about Sea of Stars.
That game looked really good.
And I was like,
looks
yeah,
great.
it's like a love letter to old Super Nintendo RPGs.
Mm-hmm.
It's like someone took Chrono Trigger and Super Mario RPG and some other games and just mashed them all into one. And that's due to people having this love of these old games, of going back in history and going, hey, let me draw on some of these old games that we're nostalgic for and put them into something new that you can play. And even with the rise of digital, I think you're still going to have people, especially with companies like Limited Run Games and I forget the name of the other company. They just popped up recently. We talked about it yesterday.
Oh, Strictly
Strictly Limited?
Strictly Limited Games, and then
Yeah.
you've got Pix and Love, and then you've got a couple other ones out there.
They're producing physical copies of digital only games for those people who still desire to have physical media.
Yeah.
So while I think that a lot of companies that are making games may go all digital simply because it's cheaper production wise, you don't have to buy the plastic for cases and have CDs and all that good stuff. You could just put it out on a digital market and sell it directly to the consumer for download. I still think companies like Limited Run and Strictly Limited are still going to be able to make money and still have a market, because there's always going to be old nerds like us that want to have those physical games. It just they're, like you said it the other day, and I thought this is a really interesting way of putting it, but they're furniture now.
Yeah.
Right? We display them, right? We display them, and it's part of it. Like, I'm not going to play all of these games, but I like the way they look and the way they display. It's no different than people that display, I don't know. You ever see people with like a china cabinet displaying all these like rare antique china that they never use?
Never.
This is basically the nerd china cabinet, is what this is.
Yep. Mine just has more holes than G's does.
But
I've been collecting, been collecting, for a lot shorter amount of time than you. So you touched on a point that I want to go back to real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So you said for physical media, right? For
Hmm.
physical games, we like buying those games because as collectors we want to have the physical video game. Do
Yeah.
you feel that once we go to full digital, we should be paying the same price for the game?
No, that's a great question. That's a great question. So the consumer of me says no,
Mm-hmm.
but the person who thinks about it from the business perspective understands kind of why we still pay the same price, right? Because you can look at it one way. I mean, you can look at it one way is they lose money on physical. They lose more money on physical games because they have to eat the cost of actually making it. But also, I think we're just so used to new AAA titles just being $60 anyway.
Well, now they're, I mean, you talk about
70.
PS, yeah, they're $70. Like hell, Hogwarts, I dropped uh, $80
So
on
did I.
hard for the
Yeah.
deluxe,
So
and
did
that was
I.
the hard copy. And all the deluxe really had was some skins. That
In
was
the early access, but
in
if you
early
didn't,
access.
yeah.
But going back to that, right?
Uh huh.
If we go full digital, what's the purpose behind having a limited or a collector's edition that you're dropping $200 or $300 on? Because if we're no longer doing physical, what you're going to be paying for some books, a couple of stickers, maybe a nice little statue that you can hang up or put in your shelf or whatever, and that's it. I mean, think of God of War Ragnarok. You got a
Mm-hmm.
dope, Mjolnir helm or hammer, or Horizon. You got whatever came in that, but
Yeah,
you
I have
had
it
no
sitting up
game.
here actually.
You had a digital code for the
Yeah.
game. I'm paying
So
$300 for some papers and trinkets, and I didn't even get the game. I got a digital code for it. Eh,
yeah, that's that. I thought that was quite weird. So for those of you who don't know, the digital version or the collector's edition of Horizon Forbidden West came with like this really awesome statue and like a big box, and it came with a steel case for the game. It has like you would have a CD case for it, like a steelbook case for it. But there's no game. There's no actual physical disc. You got just a download code. So I have a game case with no game in it. Now, to be
it's
fair, because my thought was I was excited about it for one because I was going to play the game and I was going to let somebody borrow it. Well, no, not going to do that anymore because it's a digital download. Like, sorry, buddy. Like, the person that I was gonna like let borrow it was kind of banking on me finishing it and then lending it to them so they didn't have to buy it. But I was like, well, I mean,
you're
hey,
going to have to wait a
you're
minute.
gonna have to you're gonna have to pony up them ducats because there's no game in here. Like I was shaking the case, like, what's this? Why is there no game in here? It was ridiculous. But to your point, I think what'll end up happening is that they'll do physical media just for collector's editions because there's money to be made there, right? You
Yeah.
really think about like look at the for example, look at the Tears of the Kingdom special edition that's sold out and being scalped heavily on eBay right now.
Ugh, scalpers.
Like, but scalpers are that's a whole
Yeah,
nother
yeah, we ain't even gonna
topic.
talk about that right now.
Yeah, that collector's edition is $130, and it comes with like an art book and like some pins. So they're making a killing on that because I guarantee you the cost to produce that was nowhere near what they're selling it for. So I think that will become the future of physical media is it'll be digital, but we'll release this collector's edition that may or may not have an actual game in it. Um, that'll be your physical media, I think.